Hey guys, today we're going to talk about progressive overload, what the latest research really says. We're going to go through it quickly and hit the highlights. I'm going to try for once not to be long winded. So, progressive overload, what is it? Progressive overload isn't just add weight every week, it's a systematic increase of training stress across multiple layers. So, we could be talking about weekly volume, which is load, reps, sets, or combination. It could be range of motion, it could be frequency. And today we're going to talk about how you can actually use velocity, like velocity loss, velocity at a percentage of body weight, velocity at a specific load, load at specific velocity, and when to use it. It just depends on what you're trying to do because what is the main goal? That's the question we got to ask when we're talking about progressive overload. Is it hypertrophy? Is it strength? Is it power, acceleration, max velocity? It's going to change depending on which of these is what you're after. So if the goal is hypertrophy, maximum tent is required, maximum velocity is required, but then it has to slow down. That relationship between force and velocity, it has to get so slow that these actin and myosin cross bridges can take place. You have to have the maximum tent to get these high threshold motor units, which are going to be it's going to your high threshold motor units are going to be the motor units that are actually attached to those bigger muscle fibers. And the bigger muscle fibers, it's got to slow down so the cross bridges can take place between actin and myosin. That's the deal. So low weight or heavy weight, it doesn't really matter, but it has to slow down. So if you say, what you hear all the time, you can use moderate or low weight. So you can use 35% of your 1RM if you want to do 30 reps because it has to slow down. It has to get near, you know, um, I would say like near that minimum velocity threshold. So if you're squatting, it's got to get close to that point 0.3, as close as possible without actually failing. I mean, well, you could go to failure, but remember, if you do go to failure, it's going to be harder to recover from. So normally they're going to say between 1 to 3 reps in reserve is where you want to go when you're doing those moderate to low loads. So velocity loss has to take place. If you're a sport athlete, you want to keep that velocity loss at around 25%. And studies have shown that at 25% velocity loss, you're going to get the majority of those gains without necessarily the adaptations are going to slow you down, like type 1 fiber recruitment or even that lateral force, which is good, but it's a slower form of force production. If you're a bodybuilder, going 40 plus is fine because you're just after maximum gains, whatever. And so 80% plus of 1RM, all those reps are going to produce hypertrophy. So you got to think about hypertrophy stimulating reps, which, 80%, if you're talking about a squat, is around 0.5 meters per second. So anything at 0.5 meters per second down, all those reps are going to be hypertrophy stimulating. And most of the studies are going to say around a maximum of 5 total reps per set are going to actually is all you can really count. So if you're doing like the 8 reps, only those last 5 are going to count. But if you're doing 8 reps at 60%, you're lucky if the last 1 or 2 counts because it's too fast and too easy. It's not going to get that maximum intent. So when you talk the number one driving, force of hypertrophy is mechanical tension, and it requires maximum intent, a maximum velocity, meaning you're going as fast as you can, but it's going to be slower because you're getting close to failure. Um, so you're going to progress. You can progress this with total reps or increasing average intensity. It doesn't really matter. Using a little bit of both is what I recommend. However, you do need to take into consideration Prilipin's chart, which is going to, all Prilipin did is A.E. Prilipin, I think was his initials, his first name, but he did the studies way back in the day with the Russian athletes, and he came up with the optimal number of reps if you're within this percentage of your 1RM, and you can get anywhere between 30 and 18. And total reps per set between 3 and 6. So I've broken it down here for you. So let's say if you're 80%, optimally, number of reps is around 17 total. But you can go up to 23 if you want to push it, which you want to create adaptation. Sometimes you gotta overreach just a little bit. But if you want to take a week where it's a little bit lower, so you're fatigued, around 11 is the low end of that. So now you have it. I've broken it all down for you there. What if your goal is strength? it still takes maximum intent, and it still takes maximum velocity, and it still takes slower reps. However, you're not going to get away with that low or moderate load. That's not going to be. It's not going to produce the gains of strength that you want because you're not going to have the same amount of synchronization or coordination, meaning that relationship between the agonist and antagonist, those things, or the recruiting those big threshold motor units all at once, because it happens over time. And so when you want to be strong, when you're talking about being strong, you want to recruit those high threshold motor units all at once. And so you need the heavier weight. So I progress those with the percentage of 1 RM, with RPE, with velocity. Here's an example. So 1 week I'll say I want you to work up to a 5 RM around 8.5 RPE, which is about 82.5% of your max, which if it's a squat, it's 0.47 meters per second. And then I want you to do negative 10% for 2x5. And sometimes I might say on that last set, I want 5 plus, leaving 1 RIR. So there's so many different ways to do it. And a lot of times I will give them all of these in case they don't have velocity, or if I want them to learn how to understand the intent I'm after. I want them to understand the relationship between all of these. Now here I've got this for you, this little chart, whether you're benching, strict pressing, or bent over row. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger for you and do a slideshow. And let's start from the current slide. So now you can see a little bit bigger. So 70%, if you're wanting bench, the first couple reps is going to be around 0.53 meters per second. And so if you're squatting at 80%, like I said, 0.5 meters per second is where it's going to start out. So now you can progress this with total reps, increasing the average intensity with velocity. This one I definitely recommend when it comes to strength. The intensity is going to be more important than, I wouldn't say they're both important and you can get strong with both, but most studies would suggest that by using intensity, it's easier to recover from, so less breakdown. But that's up for debate. People are going to debate that until the end of time probably. And so, by the way, I've given you a chart. So if you want to know what a 5 RM at 10 RPE, it's around 86.3%. 9.5 is around 85. Normally I say 82.5 for 9. I kind of round these, but you do what you want. So I've given you all the information. So it is all together, and you can use it how you want. So, but you do have to progress. You cannot do a 5 RM at 8.5 using a negative 10 for 2x5 every weekend. You're going to adapt. You have to progress. So maybe I'll do this week 1. Week 2, I'll go to 5 RM at 9 RPE. So it's going to be a 5 RM at 9 RPE is going to be around 83.7. And then 9.5 is 85%. And then I'll go for a 5 RM at a 10 RPE all out still. And then I'll do a negative 10% for 2x5. Maybe on this every so often, with one of those being a maximum number of reps. So see how there's so many different ways that you can progress, but you do have to have progressive overload to continue to force adaptation. What about power, acceleration, or rate of force development? That's a little different, but you still need to, you still have to have some type of progressive overload. So I've used a velocity at a percentage of body weight. So example, back squat at 100% of body weight, with my goal is to be as close to 1.0 meters per second or higher. And the way you do that is you're going to do 110% some days, 90% some days, and you're just going to work and try different modes until this gets faster. And most studies would say when a person can hit 100% of their 1 RM back squat, 100% of their body weight on a back squat at 1.0 meters per second or faster, they're going to be at their most optimal mode to hit their fastest sprint times. So try it for yourself if you don't believe me. Now, a power clean is something we've used specifically, using a power clean or a trap bar jump at 90%, 100%, and 110% of body weight. And so, in trying to get faster mean or peak velocities at each of those. And then also looking at time to peak velocity. That's also important because just peak velocity is one thing, but if you increase the time to peak, even better because it's going to be more specific to a sport, right? So, and then a load at specific velocities. Here are some examples. Say 0.75 meters per second is a collision that happens at the line of scrimmage in football. So, using more and more of a load at 0.75, or using a higher load at 1.08 meters per second, which is the first step of a wide receiver, or 0.85 meters per second is the load which you want maximum power to happen. It's something that will also, be something that you can use on the field of play. So, here are some examples.
Well, I've been known to
Little
write a few songs, loving and leaving and get too stoned.
So if you can do that with weightlifting 160 kilograms, this is why weightlifting is so awesome for acceleration. It forces the athlete to pull the bar as fast as they can throughout the range of motion because they have to just by the sheer nature of the sport. Another examples here. With Matt cleaning 172 kilograms, 378 pounds, which ironically led to a 41-inch vertical. Bam! Funny how those go together. Mm. Now, deloads. They're a useful tool, but they're not a law of nature. Most recently, a supervised study found a 1 week mid block deload minimally affected hypertrophy, but it may reduce strength versus continuous training. That's Coleman M. et al. 2024. Scheduled deloads based on performance and readiness trends like HRV, bar speed, might be better than just a calendar. So just doing I used to I would do week one, moderate, moderate load, moderate volume. Week two, high volume. Week three, deload. Week four, high intensity. It might not be the best way to do things, as opposed to just doing it based on when they're actually needed. By taking a look at, like, say, a jump using vertical leaps, or looking at their typical velocity of their warm up sets, might be the better way to do it. So there you go. Even I learned something getting ready for this. Range of motion, that's another thing. Long length work and contraction mode are underrated for overload vectors. So using long length partials for maximum hypertrophy type 2 fiber gain. So go to the bottom of a squat and only come up a quarter of a way. So using those partial reps at full length might provide more hypertrophy and type 2 fiber at that. Using accentuated eccentric loading for strength, improved stretch shortening cycle, elastic energy, all that. So using weight releasers, partnered assisted eccentric loading. I'll show you examples. Flywheels. And let me show you. Here's weight releasers. And by the way, using it on the first rep also led to improvements on the next two reps. So doing sets of three might be your best bet using weight releasers. Here's the partner assistant eccentric, accentuating eccentric load. So now, take out. Oh, a couple of great ways to use that. Isometric lengthen positions are also good. Let's put it all together. Picking 1 to 2 primary levers per block. So hypertrophy block, maybe you can progress weekly with sets and or reps using a velocity loss between 25 to 50%, depending on if it's a sport athlete or you're just a bodybuilder. Maybe you want to widen that range of motion as you go and work on either using accentuated eccentric loading or lengthened partials. Strength block, progress load week to week, keep velocity loss between 10 to 25%. Maybe hold volume steady, but increase that the average intensity might be better. So maybe track 2 simple KPIs like reps at 75 to 80% of the 1RM, or weight at a fixed RPE RIR, and then you get your best rep velocity on your main lift warm ups, and you can start to determine whether you want to do the deload or not. If both stall for 2 to 3 exposures, add a small add a small dose of volume, like plus 2 to 4 weekly sets for that muscle, or reduce velocity loss, fatigue, and push the load. So you can use these to determine what to do, as opposed to just randomly saying, "Hey, we're going to deload this week." Use those warm up sets to determine what you're going to do. So regulate with guardrails. Like use 1 to 3 reps in reserves on most of the working sets, or set the use velocity to set those parameters. If warm up bar speed is down, RI feels tighter, keep the load, but maybe shave a set or two. I do that all the time. Let that be your deload. If bar speed is up, add some stuff. Deload only when the data says so. So for power, acceleration, and rate of force development, use velocity to progress it. I gave you a bunch of examples. So there you go, man. Progressive overload. You have to use it. Even Westside Barbell, they sometimes Louis didn't really like the progressive overload, but even he was using it. With max effort days, he was over time was progressively overloading, adding more and more weight, obviously. And even he used the waves, and he was progressively overloading that in one way or the other. So you can call it conjugate. You can just do the linear periodization, whatever you're doing. Eventually, you're progressing. You're progressively overloading. You just got to pick your poison. So there's a few of the references I used. Thank you guys.